Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Violet Rain.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Violet B. Rain, and today I have with me Joy Baker. Joy excels at supporting individuals with becoming unstuck and freeing themselves so that they can live a more fulfilled and creative life. Since we're rarely taught as children how to process and let go of emotions that are limiting us, those emotions can become stuck in our bodies at the cellular level. If you've ever gone through any trauma in your life, such as a car accident, breakup with a relationship, loved ones dying, loss of employment, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, or more, chances are you haven't known how to deal with the emotional aftermath of those emotions. Those emotions then become stored in our body. Once that happens, you can develop attachments to those limiting feelings, unconsciously creating scenarios in your life that can cause feelings such as anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, anger, overwhelm, etc., to repeat over and over again. I don't think anybody's life has not had at least a few of those, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
Pretty
what
much.
this experience is all about, is we have those experiences throughout. So all of us have that stuck emotion. And I also talk about we swallow our words instead of speaking our truth. And that also gets stuck after you do that time after time. So welcome, Joy, to the show. I'm so glad to have you on here.
Thank you for having me on your show, Violet. It's great to be here. And yeah,
So
like you said, it's so, that, and often it's childhood trauma and that, gets stuck. And yeah, we're taught to swallow our words, and then that creates more, stuckness and often health issues. So yeah,
well, we talk about a lot about how we swallow our emotions, and that's where our digestive issues come from because our body doesn't know how to process it in a healthy way. So then we have all these digestive issues that happen within our body because that toxicity sits there and kind of rots and creates lots of
Mhm.
different problems. So I think we all face that from time to time. What led you to understand this, to kind of do this work? Like most people are led along a journey that leads them to go,
Mhm.
okay, aha, now I want to share it. So share with us your story.
Yeah, so it's been about a 30-year journey. I used to work with horses, so I showed horses for 10 years, trained race horses for 15 years, and it was actually on the racetrack. I was completely 3D. I was numb. I had no idea feelings, what they even were. I had to have that explained to me actually. And it was actually somebody on the racetrack who mentioned, something along personal growth and such. That got me interested in that. It was actually 30 years ago this month that I took Tony Robbins' Fire Walk, and that was really my first workshop. And I had no intention of walking on fire until I went there, and then we did the visualization several times. And when you're actually on fire, you're saying cool moss. So you're speaking cool moss, so your mind sees it as moss and not walking on hot coals. And that really kept me going for the longest time. I ended up leaving the racetrack, 8-year relationship, basically my whole life. Everybody I knew was on the racetrack, walked away from it all. And then about a couple years after that, I guess, I read the books, the Celestian Prophecy. And that was what introduced me to energy and how energy fields, are always interacting and such. And it was when I learned about energy that kind of like the spark went off and I went, it all makes sense now. That's how we're connected. And then I just really got into, learning about energy, taking courses about energy. And I knew that I wanted to work with people the way this was supporting me and waking me up and giving me answers. I wanted to do that for others. So I knew for 20 years that I wanted to work with others until I'd done enough inner work and finally started believing in myself. It took about 20 years. And then I finally launched my healing business. And during that path, I went bankrupt twice. And that was because I just didn't believe in myself. And, it's that childhood trauma and felt worthless, no value. So I didn't really believe I could make money, and especially after I left the horses. And so I just wasn't making any money. I actually did not want to go bankrupt. I went to a debt consolidator both times. They told me I had to go bankrupt. And so it was like I just wasn't going to get out of this situation I was in until I started really believing in myself. And I also went through 8 years of repressed memories of sexual abuse. It came up, while I was on the path, which I had no idea of because I just completely had numbed everything out. And so it's about 10 years ago now that I started my healing business, and it's been quite a journey. So
I love that. I love that because I think we all, excuse me, it's spring in Colorado or summer or whatever it is, all the allergies. I think we all have opportunities for healing. And I don't think healing ever stops because I think we're like this big onion with all these zillions of layers that we
yeah.
peel back a little at a time. Because if we peeled the whole thing, it would be too hard for us to process all of that healing all at once. So we end up peeling like little layers, and people will say, well, I've done so much healing, I'm kind of done. I'm like, oh, you're never done. We're never done. There's still more. There's still more in there, right? Because we're sensitive human beings. And so what we don't realize is a lot of things impact us without us knowing. So, having the opportunity to heal is really important. You talk about your life doesn't define who you are. So what do you mean by that? Your life doesn't define who you are. What do you mean by that statement? And how do we grow within that no matter what our life is doing?
It's Well, the way I usually say it is your trauma doesn't define, who you are, what you've gone through. And so often we do. We go through trauma, whether as a child or even as an adult. And we say, well, that's who I am, or that's how people always treat me, or that always happens. And it becomes your story and your identity. And it's based off that abuse or that trauma or the conditioning you received growing up. But you're an adult now and you decide and you choose. And that takes a huge amount of courage because you're changing your belief systems. You're changing how you look at things and understand things and opening up to new viewpoints. So it takes a huge amount of courage. But your trauma and abuse and the conditioning you received growing up, it doesn't have to define you. You can be who you decide and choose to be. So, and what that statement means is there's so much more available to you if you allow yourself to believe in it.
Well, and part of your story, you talked about walking away from all your relationships, your career, what you did. Talk to people that are sitting in that situation that are having a hard time making that decision. How did you find the courage to do that?
When I did that 30 years ago, it was really when looking back, I felt like I had no choice. Like something had to change. And I read the book. So I was still on the racetrack, and I read the book Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And I remember the first chapter. I mean, it was over 30 years ago I read the book, so I don't remember much except for the first chapter. And it was about if you want to change your life, make a big decision and take big action. And I knew I had to make a big change. And my whole life had been about the horses. I'm sure my first word was horse. So it was, even though I was leaving an 8-year relationship and everybody I knew on the racetrack, it was leaving the horses was really the big thing. But I just knew that something had to change, and my relationship with the horses had changed because the whole industry was changing, was becoming more business-like and about money and stress and such. So I just, how I did it, it was definitely the hardest thing I've done in my life. I mean, I had no idea what was in front of me, but it was just physically, I couldn't do the 7 days a week because back then it was 7 days a week we were working. And it was something had to change. And after reading that book and then doing the Tony Robbins Fire Walk, knowing that, something greater was possible, I didn't know what it was, but something greater was possible. I just had to make I just, yeah, had to do it. You come to that point where you just can't live that life any longer. And so I had to walk away from it. Fortunately, I did have somebody I could stay with for a little bit. So, because I also didn't know how I was going to make money. I was making a little bit, and so that definitely helped me out, and that I wasn't going to be on the street or sleeping in my car. And that got me through the next part. And then it was once I realized, I wasn't working with horses anymore, but I needed a job. I didn't realize, I honestly didn't know there was anything more to life than horses. That had been my whole life. I talked, slept that, I dreamt about horses, worked with horses. It was just horses. And so I had to realize what was I going to do? So I was actually in network marketing at the time, and I thought, well, I don't really even know people. Like, how do I get to know and understand people if they don't have a horse? And so I, phoned, I rarely used a phone. And I mean, a landline or a mobile phone, anything like that. So I'm like, well, I've got to learn how to talk to people. So I got a job, telemarketing. And this was when I was really, really shy. I was pretty much terrified of people. So it was like, what's my greatest fear? That's actually what I asked myself. What's my greatest fear? And it was dealing with people. So how did, you're going to deal with people and get over your fear. Well, telemarketing is a great way to do that. And so I just had that job I just had it for about a month, and then the company folded. But that ended up being my go-to survival job, because anytime I needed to make money, there's always a need for telemarketers. And because most people don't, they don't like them much, so they are in demand. And then after that, I was looking for another job, and I interviewed for this position, turned out to be door to door sales. And again, just walking up to doors and knocking on the door. And I'm so terrified of people. But again, it was that terror of people and even interacting with people that I was like, I have to do this. So those are two big things I did to get over my fear of just living in the world and people and interacting with them, was telemarketing and cold calling, knocking on doors. And I did that for a little over 3 months. And then I just, went forward from there. At the same time, I was reading, because this was 30 years ago. Now we've got the internet, but that wasn't as popular. I was reading tons of books on anything to do with personal growth and about the self and the mind, and then learning about energy and such, and learning about different techniques. Like I found EFT, emotional freedom technique, and I guess it was about early 2000. I remembered using Google and putting in something like dealing with energy techniques that deal with trauma or something like that. And I found EFT, and I was like, oh my gosh, this technique will help me get past anything. It's like no matter what comes up, I can just tap it away. And I did. I would just tap for hours sometimes.
I love that. I love your courage, and I love you stepping out, because most people will turn away from fear, and fear blocks them. And what they don't understand is if they can push through that fear, there's beautiful blessings on the other side, and
Absolutely.
growth and change. But we're terrified. We're also terrified of failure. And you talked about, that you went into bankruptcy twice. And look, you're still here. You survived it, right? And if people could just get to that point, hey, if I fail, I just start over again. If I fail, I'm still here. I get to do it again. If we could just get through some of those fears that we have of making change, because I think that's why we're so terrified of change in our lives, is because something could come up and we don't know what to do with it, or it could push us through those fears, right? But if we could just move through those, we could really find the blessings on the other side. You also talk about self-talk, on what we're saying to ourselves in our mind. Share a little bit of your perspective on self-talk.
Oh, that's so big. I'm glad you brought that up, Violet, because you can literally turn your life around and how you see things and how you view yourself with your self-talk. So we are generally taught to, some of the core beliefs we have conditioned with growing up, you're not enough. It's not, the world is not safe. You're not safe. It's, different things like that, just core beliefs that cause us to not believe in ourselves. And then our self-talk is really harsh. And most people, pretty much everybody, get on the path because you've gone through some kind of abuse or trauma and you're working through that. So now that's stuck in your nervous system. Your brain and your nervous system are interacting with each other. And plus you've been told things like you're not good enough or you're not going to amount to much, whatever it is. So then you start talking to yourself that way. You grow up with that. And now that it becomes your talk becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it doesn't have to. If you want more in your life, you want more money, you want that loving relationship, you want a career, ask your boss for a raise, anything like that, start to talk to yourself with kindness and understanding. And it's funny that you bring up failure, because I was just thinking about that this morning. And because with failure, which is just a series of actions that have created a result, that we called failure, but it's just our actions that create a result. So if you don't like the result, you just have to take a look at it and go, okay, well, I've got to take some different actions here because this didn't work. But so often we go right to, well, I failed at that. No, you didn't. You grew, you tapped into your courage, you stepped out of your comfort zone, did something different. You had an experience you wouldn't have had otherwise. You see life through a different lens now. You haven't failed. You've experienced life. Now take a look at your actions. It created that result, and you take different actions. And so, yeah, I was just thinking about that this morning. So we're on the same wavelength here. But yeah, if you want to really pay attention to your self-talk, that's where EFT is great for that, because you're tapping meridian endpoints. And when you tap on that, if you say a statement, see, when we say a statement, we can all say a statement, but it's when it gets emotionally charged, we get attached to emotions. Like, I'm not enough. If somebody really likes themselves, they feel good about themselves, those words, I'm not enough, they're just words. But if somebody feels the emotional impact of that, then it gets stuck in their nervous system and their cells, and the memory gets stuck. But when you tap, you release emotional attachment to that statement, and that's why it can be so powerful. And so that's one of the techniques. If I don't use it in my sessions, EFT, but I've used it on myself, and it's just such a powerful technique, and it's free. So I just want to mention that, if anybody's listening, they can use that.
Absolutely. EFT, you can find information on the internet, YouTube, all of that. And it really is just tapping and saying statements so that your body releases it. It's emotional something technique. I don't know, I'll say it wrong, but
Emotional
it is
freedom
about
technique.
emotional what?
Emotional freedom technique.
Emotional freedom
Yeah.
technique. So EFT is very powerful if you're trying to release emotions that are stuck within you. It can really help. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if emotions are coming up, emotions, energy, and motion, they all have consciousness. So another thing you can also do is just say, let's say you're feeling a little off. Just ask yourself, what is this coming up right now, or what am I feeling? And let go of any need to be right. It's energy. Energy doesn't care what you call it. That's a human, trait we have, the words we call things. And so just say, what emotion is this right now that I'm feeling? Well, I'm feeling shame, despair, I feel bad, anything like that. Just name it, and then you can talk to it. Or it might be fear, and just say, oh, fear, okay, I see you've come up again. I see you're there. Is there something I'm supposed to learn from you? No, okay, you just want to kind of throw my day off. Well, you know what, fear, it's time to send you to the light. So we're just going to send you to the light, and I'm going to go on feeling good and go on with my day. And you just have a conversation with it, because that emotion that comes up, or if it's anxiety, anything like that, we're energy beings. That energy, that emotion, anxiety, and fear is you wanting to be acknowledged and accepted. So when you can acknowledge it, you're actually acknowledging yourself, and then you send it to the light.
I love
So
that.
it can actually be really easy, but the more you can do that, now we're not taught that. We're taught to go through life unconsciously. So it's a conscious process, but the more you can do that, then it becomes, you do it consciously at first, and then eventually it just becomes, oh, I'm off today. What is it? Oh, that's anxiety. Okay, anxiety. Well, thanks for showing up, but it's time for you to go to the light, and I'm just going to go on with my day now. So it can be really simple.
I love that. You talk about creating what you desire in your life. How do we create? How do we manifest? How do we attract and draw in what we want in our lives?
Good question. So the first thing is you've got to have some kind of vision. So something that you want in your life. In other words, and I'll ask people this, and they're working on themselves and spent years, decades working on themselves, but they won't have anything to move forward to. And if you don't have, it's like energy, we'll just go in a loop. But if you don't have anything to move forward to, but as soon as you have something to move forward to, then the energy, you focus on that, and the energy releases from that loop. So, and if you say more money, that's a common, thing we want, more money. And what do you want? What kind of experience, or what do you want with that money? You want to buy a house, you want to travel, you want to buy a new wardrobe, you want to get a car, spend work less, 4 days instead of 5, whatever it is. So it's not just more money. What experience do you want to have with that money? Or you want to get into a relationship, something like that. That's the first thing. You have to have some kind of vision you're moving towards. And then, so you've got something you're moving towards. Let's say you want to travel. That's a common one. And have a place in mind. And then you can look up pictures of that and imagine what it will be like to be there, how you feel relaxed, at ease, free, expansive, adventurous. You're enjoying yourself. And so you imagine that, and you get into the feeling of that. And if you can't, then I've had people say, well, I've never really felt that way before. I don't know what it feels like. Well, imagine it. Well, if I was feeling light and free, well, my whole body would probably feel light, and right away the pressure comes off. And I'd probably feel more expansive, and my body would probably feel, more flexible. Well, that's feeling light and free. So you imagine it. And then, because the more your emotions are energy and motion, the more emotion you put in that vision, uplifting emotion of happiness, gratitude, you can imagine telling somebody, oh, I went to, Hawaii or Paris, and man, it was so fun. I was doing this and this, and that you're excited and you're involved, and that person's getting excited because of your experience. You imagine that. And the more you do that, your emotions are like a magnet. That's how you magnetize your vision. The more you do that, you magnetize that vision to you, and you magnetize yourself to that vision. And at first, when you have that vision, it's in the energetic space. But the more you magnetize that with your emotions, eventually it will, you will create it in your physical space.
I love that. I love that. So you mentioned earlier about taking us through a group meditation process. I'm going to allow you to do that right now.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so just take a deep breath in. There you go. There. Okay. So be kind to yourself. Any and all ways you have been taught, and it's like a habit now to be harsh on yourself, just let that go. Just let that go on all levels: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, cellular. Just let that go. Any need to be harsh on towards yourself, just let that go. Anything you get from being harsh towards yourself or using harsh or unsupportive self-talk, let's honor and acknowledge that, and then just let that go. There you go. There's a little fun and lightness and laughter coming up. And okay, so the child is showing up, the inner child, which is awesome and amazing, but at the same time, they seem quite uh, heavy and distraught about something. Okay, so the feeling distraught is about this is about the state of the world. So the child within you that is so highly sensitive is looking out into the world and seeing the chaos and feeling quite upset about this. Okay, so yes, child, we see you. But imagine, so child, you know how with your high sensitivity to go out to the world, and yes, you see the chaos, but let's clear that chaos a little bit. And imagine you're looking at some of the people, so the individual people, and what if that is their path? It's not easy to go through, and you can support them and encourage them, but you don't have to take on their chaos and their pain. Simply bless them. There you go. And let them go and let yourself be free. There you go. So just bless all those that are willing and ready to receive blessings. There you go. There, your child just relaxed. Okay. Take a deep breath in. Let that go. And just notice how your mind, body, spirit, and soul feel so much more relaxed, at ease, uplifted, joyful. Any part of you that feels bad, that has been conditioned to feel bad when you feel good, let's honor and acknowledge that, and then just send that conditioning to the light. The part of you that believes you have to feel bad when you feel good, let's just send that to the light. There you go. And know that it's okay to feel good. When you feel good, then you feel even better. And when you feel even better, then you feel even more uplifted and you can support even more people with that radiant, beautiful, uplifting energy within you that radiates from you. And in that way, you're supporting the raising of humanity's consciousness. There you go. There, your whole self relaxed. There's some ease, happiness, and joyfulness. And your child feels very, very relaxed and joyful, uplifted. So shokabasa wala sa shoko babaka tokabase so shokabasa wala ka awala sa so shokabasa tokabase babaka so shokabasa wala ka. There you go, my friend. Namaste.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That was awesome. Very
Thank you
cool.
for giving me the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have your website along the bottom of this video and in the description of the audio. But share with us if somebody wanted to work with you, Joy, what are some of the things that you offer and on your website, whatever that is, so that when we go and check you out, we'll find that.
Okay. Yeah, so there's one-on-one sessions as far as people can work on like a one-on-one through the phone or Zoom, but it's just audio. And so I offer that, and I can work with people all around the world. But I also work, in fact, that's how I started out doing this full time, through pictures. So a person would just send me a picture, and because that holds the energy, and it holds our energy signature and our aura. And so what I do then, somebody sends me the picture and the issue they want cleared, and then I'll record that and send that recording, that MP3, to them, and they can listen to it, whenever they want. And that's, convenient for people anywhere they live in the world. And you don't have to be doing anything in particular. You just go about your day, be any time zone, and I just, see whatever comes up in your energy field and clear that out. So there's a couple ways you can work, just one-on-one through like the phone or a conference call like this, or through your picture. And that's, all on my website.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. What a beautiful practice that you have there to help people.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, it's been a blessing. Thank you for being here. And those watching, thank you for listening. I hope you'll like, comment, and follow us on your favorite channels. And check out Joy's website and information that'll be at the bottom in the description so that you can see what all she offers. I always like to wish everybody a sacred and magical week as we end this video. And I hope that you are blessed 1,000 times today. Thank you, Joy, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Violet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Violet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.